Good evening and welcome to another exciting meeting of the Charlton Water and Sewer Commission. Today is May 6, 2019, and the first thing we do after an election is usually to reorganize, and we'll do that today too. Anybody got any suggestions for anything?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion, make Mr. Womansky chairman.
Are you a second?
Second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I'd like to,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Paul Gagner as vice chairman.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
I'd like to nominate Paul Gagner as vice chairman.
Oh,
Second.
okay, I guess. Well, I guess I won't object, but all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Could always say no, Paul.
Well, all right.
I mean, it would be 4 against 1, but.
I thought I'd get to sit further away from the center here, but, actually, I'd like to make a motion then to keep you as
boy.
clerk.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on that? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Now, the next question is, Mr. Lemansky, you are chair, you can come
No,
take
you're
this
doing a
right
fine
now,
job. Keep
or
right- keep
start
right on
next
going.
week, that's up to
No,
you.
no, yes, stay.
All right, then I'll
right on
ask if
going.
there's anybody here for public, yes.
Payroll authorization.
Sorry.
Payroll authorization.
The signer,
Oh,
the payroll.
that'd be Rob's decision. The question is, I've been signing payroll for a number of years, you wanna take over that task?
Status quo is
Or
fine
you
with
wanna
me.
keep it, okay?
Yep.
Just, we can't, actually, I've been signing it, but I think we had given permission to about 3 different people to sign it, and get in my absence or something like
Yeah.
that.
Is that the case? Have we done that?
I believe
believe so.
so, but you should probably re-vote it every year.
I don't know about last year, but I know the year before, we had appointed 2 or 3 people, and I don't know if Alex was one, people that were unable to cut there during the
Yep.
day mostly, so they said, oh, just do it, and somebody else can do it if you're unable.
I think it's a formality, if someone makes a motion for Paul to be able to stay signing and the chairman can sign in his absence.
Sure. I'll make a motion that Paul stay a signer and in his absence, Mr. Womansky sign.
Second,
Second.
second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, now we gotta ask if there's anyone here for public forum. If not, let's see, our first appointment is here, but we're still a little early, so I think we'll
Go.
go on with the reading of the warrants and abatements.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes of April 22nd, 2019 as printed.
I'll second first. Okay.
You had a second? Any discussion on any statements in here? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstain.
You have more for us, sir.
Yes. Make a motion, we accept the warrants as printed as follows. Commissioner salary, $400. Osterman's, $1,142.10. Viola, $1,336. Viola, $2,560. Viola, $2,563.04. Viola, $3,556.09. WB Mason, $6.57. Mass Waterworks Association, $50. Helgerson, $1,050. Commonwealth of Mass, $5.80. Kleinfelder, $9,977.50. Viola, $38,486.07. WB Mason, $23.14. Cosgrove and Blatt, $207, for a grand total of $61,363.31.
Second.
Motion, do I have a second? Okay, any discussion on any of these?
Kleinfeld, is that
I was
just a
just
wash?
looking to Russ. Just, what's the Kleinfeld invoice?
That's,
ExxonMobil.
I'm
Water.
sorry, that's because we went for,
Okay,
I'm sorry, Kleinfelder approved it.
Okay.
Okay, so
so it's
it's,
a McClure
I'm sorry
invoice
about that, yeah, it's McClure.
that's approved by Kleinfeld, that's reimbursed to the town by
That will,
Kleinfelder.
yes, that will be
So
reimbursed.
we pay it, and we get reimbursed from Kleinfelder.
okay,
So it's actually paid to McClure.
so it's a pass-through.
What's a reimbursement?
We pay them, they
We pay
us.
them, we
Right,
get
yeah,
reimbursed.
okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You have more for us, Russ?
Nope.
You're all done, you're all done. Well, Peter, I see you in the audience, but it says here Peter and Beta. Do you ready to come up alone, or do you need to wait for Beta to get here?
Talk about my part of it.
Sure, come on up and let's,
I was hoping they were gonna be here, so I could
Use your easel?
use their easel. This will just help. There's nothing in here that isn't in the report, the letter report that I provided you guys, but it's bigger, so it may be easier to see. To make a long story short, we were, I think, the objectives of that second drilling program was primarily to evaluate the extent of that gravel layer that's down at 115 to 135 feet. I believe that that was a success. That we did find that on that peninsula, there is, that gravel layer is fairly extensive, covers up underneath that whole part of the property. The question that remains is how far does it extend out onto the lake? We are trying to reach out to the Army Corps and find out if the bathymetry of the lake may actually intersect that gravel layer. The water table is around 72 feet below ground there. And based on the survey that we had done in the prior phase over the summer, that's almost precisely the elevation of Buffinville, which it's a strong indication that the gravel layer and Buffinville are related, hydraulically connected, which is a good thing, which means Buffinville is a source of recharge to that gravel layer if water comes out of that gravel layer. So bearing in mind that the primary objective of this phase with the small drill rig was to identify the extent of that gravel, I think we did a good job. I think we figured that out. Because we had set several wells in when we were out there, Peter and I went out and we did a short-term 1-hour pump test just to see if the response in the wells that we installed was similar to what we observed when we pump tested over it in October, November. And it was. In these graphs, on these figures, and I'll reference them here because they're easier to see. If you recall the first report that I provided you guys back in the fall, we had the offset well, and I remember we had a very, very rapid decline, and then it flattened out, which suggested to me very conductive, but what we call a confined aquifer. In other words, water doesn't seep down from above; it comes in from the side, and above it is a hydraulic restriction. So it's sort of an idealized case of an aquifer. And then so we ran the pump test for an hour and shut it off, and it responded. It recovered almost instantly. Within 5 minutes, it was at 95% of the drawdown. And we've done this from several wells. This just happens to be the best image that made it on here. But where are we here? This is the well right here. This BW2 is the one we installed last summer. This is the 1 and 3. Hi, Bob. Hey, Kenneth. Were the ones where we had, when we first proposed additional work, we had proposed larger diameter wells for pumping purposes. This is the location that we had proposed those. So we got well records in those locations that we were hoping to get. And then we peppered a few other wells here. These two wells, we hit boulders at odd depths, 25 feet, 45 feet, very inconsistent with everything else we found. So we know that's not refusal, it's just, there's a lot of boulders in some portion of the site over to the southeast. That we, I think I mentioned that to you when we were here a couple months ago. And then, have you been out to the site?
I walked that whole area
So you-
years ago.
So you know that there's that little
Pretty familiar.
isthmus that you have to
Yep.
walk across to get there.
Mhm.
So we did put a couple wells, a couple borings on the other side, on the east side of that, towards the parcel 2 that you guys are looking at acquiring. This BW8, we hit refusal at 90 feet, as opposed to 130 something feet over on this side. And that, I'm pretty sure that is it's till, or it's something that doesn't produce water. We did have water in there, because the water there is also at roughly 70 feet, the equivalent elevation. But then as we moved, we went another couple hundred feet to the east, and we hit refusal. We tried a couple different locations, we hit refusal at 60, 59, 52, 59 feet. So, whatever's under there is coming up. So we don't think that there's much water supply potential further to the east. But I do feel fairly confident, based on the materials that we encountered and the results of the short-term pump test, that the geology under here is conducive to extraction, to water extraction. I don't know if
Excuse
these,
me, Peter, so
yeah.
that's going, the wells go north to south?
yeah, this is north, up is
Okay,
north here.
okay,
Yep,
yeah.
so this is the one we put in, a little further up the peninsula, right, to the, that's about 130 feet north. That one went down 133 feet. This one here went down 120 feet, but in this one, refusal, so the drill rig that we used when we put that well in last summer was a very powerful rig that could drill get a 6-inch core. So, it's also, it's very expensive, as you know, so which is why we kind of changed course. We wanted to maybe punch a bunch of different holes around and try to examine the extents of this material. But that was, so it's a much cheaper, much more flexible rig, except it only can do, for this depth, it could only do a 1-inch core. So what we found at 130 feet, or 120 feet at BW2 was gravel, 2-inch to 3-inch gravel bordering on cobble, that the rig that we used a month ago couldn't penetrate. So that rig would just bounce on that stuff. But what I observed is that right above refusal was a very coarse brown loose sands, which is identical to what I observed right above the gravel layer, the real coarse stuff at BW2 with the bigger barrel, the bigger core. So I'm fairly confident. I'm very confident that what we see under there is more real coarse gravel that rig just couldn't penetrate. So, and that's borne out by the results of the testing and how quickly the well recovered and how, the response. So there's a couple things. So, I also included in your report, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but this is a kind of an ideal cross-section. This is BW2, this is north, this is south. So that would be in this orientation here, showing the land surface, and then there's between 20 and 25 feet of kind of coarse sand and gravel that's bone dry, and then 60, 70 feet of fine, very uniform fine sand. Goes all the way down to about elevation about 100, not elevation, but the depth of around 100, 110 feet. And then below that is where we get in the coarse sand and the gravel layer. That gravel layer seems to be real uniform in depth across the areas that we encountered it, which is 3, 2, 4, and well 7, which is just west. Well 7 is this well here. So it seems to be a fairly extensive, underneath this whole area, this whole western area, it seems to be underlain by this real nice gravel layer. Now, it's not super thick, it's, 20 to 25 feet thick, but it does transmit water real well.
Any
So,
any
yeah.
projection on safe yield rate?
Yeah, well, so, let me, if you don't mind, give me a
No,
second
go
to
ahead,
sort
go
of
ahead.
explain
Yeah,
why
okay.
safe yield's a little bit, some of the factors that go into safe yield here.
Okay.
So one is, when we did that test last year, we could pump it at just around 35 gallons a minute from a small diameter well with an undersized pump. And, when we monitored the drawdown next, in the well that's adjacent, the monitoring well that we installed adjacent to it, and we estimated around 40 to 45 gallons a minute, I believe, out of that well could yield. Now, based on based on the geologic materials primarily, I estimate we could probably do between 35 and 40 gallons a minute out of each well if multiple wells are put in. So what I wanted to show you in this graph here is that how wells, if there are multiple wells on a site, their drawdown, they interact with one another. And they interact in a way that's basically additive. So if I have a well that has, if I'm pumping a well and I got 10 feet of drawdown here, and a nearby well that's not pumping shows a foot of drawdown resulting from this well pumping.
Right.
If this well pumps 10 feet of drawdown in 1 foot, then we see 11 feet at each well. Okay, they add up. So I have to keep that take that into account when I calculate safe yield, because there is a thing called available water, which is the amount of water you can dewater, you can pull that water in the aquifer down before you start damaging pump or the well, or in extreme cases, you can damage an aquifer. You can actually cause it to consolidate, which you get land subsidence, and that's, that can be, well, you permanently lose capacity in the aquifer, and it can cause problems if you have structures above it. So Peter and I had talked about this, and we think that it's reasonable to expect that we could probably site 5 individual wells out there. 3 of them at the locations that we had already drilled, the 2, the 3, and the 4, and then offset. We have one well, BW7, which right now is in line with BW2. But if we offset those and put one in between, so we basically have a W with a well at each point, each vertex of the W, sort of facing the lake. We think we can manage this well interference effect. So we have information, but right now it's very preliminary, and I have to be careful about making we would have to do the prolonged pump test to really define it concretely. But my estimate is we could get 5 wells out there between 30 to 40 gallons a minute apiece.
What's diameter do you think these wells should be?
So I think they should be 8-inch. And I think that because an 8-inch well gives you a lot more flexibility for the pump sizing. Depending on how this, where the water goes, you might need a pump with a lot of horsepower to pump a lot of head. We know at the moment, we got to pump that water at least 70 feet to get it just to the ground surface. So we may need to have a decent horsepower motor, and we don't want to be constrained in what we can pump because we put a well in that's too small. An 8-inch diameter well with we have a limited length of screen that we can use. So we have what's called screen entrance velocity. So we got to keep the water that's flowing into the well, across the well screen, below 0.1 feet per second. And the well screen surface area is, it's the circumference times the height. So a bigger circumference, the more surface area you have, so you can keep that screen entrance velocity down. If the water comes through the screen too fast, you can get, it can be corrosive to the metal in the screen. It can cause mineral precipitation in the screen, so premature fouling, and excessive head loss. So more head loss actually it ends up working that you have less available water because you can't dewater the pump. You don't want to dewater the pump. So if you have too much head loss in the well, you're pulling the water down too far, you can risk sucking air into the pump intake, and that's not good for the pump, and it's not good for the operation of the system. So an 8-inch diameter well would be a preference. You could get away with a smaller diameter well, a 6-inch well, but it's my opinion that an 8-inch well would be the right well.
How many times more expensive is
Is
an
an 8
8-inch
from a
well?
6?
I've never
There you
done
go,
an 8,
yes,
so,
there you go.
yeah, than a 6-inch well.
That's my question, it's coming up.
You know, it might
Twice as
be,
expensive, or 3 times, or?
no, you know, it might be 30 to 50% more expensive. I mean,
Okay.
for the depth we're going, to get a 6-inch well in, you're gonna have to get a pretty big piece of equipment in.
Yeah,
And, you know, ironically, a 6-inch well, you know, a well driller will do it, but most of them are tooled for 8-inch wells. Because they do a lot of the, you know, for the bigger municipal public water supply wells, the testing phase, you know, it's the rolling pumps, they'll put an 8-inch test well in. So they have the, you know, they have the pipe, they have the drills, the cutter heads, that, you know, the dual rotary, you know, drill rig is set up for an 8-inch well because they do a fair number of them. You'd have to tweak it to make a 6-inch well, but it's the same equipment for the most part, the same rig. Piping costs would be lower because it's you know, it's less metal. But, you know, what you guys would do here is this 8-inch well would ultimately be your production well, you know, as opposed to it, you know, a lot of these folks will put in an 8-inch test well, run the pump test, do all the analysis, and then go out and design a, you know, 18-inch or 18 or 24-inch well or whatever. So you wouldn't be spending the second nut, I guess is the point.
24-inch well?
Some municipalities, yeah, I'm putting a 32 in Canton right now.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
big,
it's almost like Oak Island,
yeah.
huge.
That well will do probably 700 or 800 gallons a minute. So that's what, same, you know, screen entrance
Yes, the
velocity.
water's there though, for that.
The water's there. Yeah, and the water is about 4 feet below ground surface instead of 70-something feet below ground surface. So it's, they're all different. Everyone is
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at 5 wells at 40 gallons per minute, it's about 225,000 gallons per day.
Are they all the same depth?
They would all be pretty much the same. I mean, they'd be set essentially at the same elevation. There's topography up there, so the depth, you know, if there's 5-foot difference in surface elevation, but they'd be all screened at the same elevation.
The same water, all 5 wells?
Yes.
Sucking the same
Yes,
water?
that's exactly, and this is what this graph is trying to depict. It's 3 wells. It was sort of a conceptual. This is actually based on the data, the one cone, because we had 1 well pumping. But this basically shows you the, this is well 2 here. This would be well, you know, it doesn't matter, 3 and
If
well
it's taking
4.
up the
But
same water, would it be more cost effective to put a bigger well in, if just put 1 in?
No. So the problem is this cone. We can't get water into the well through the aquifer because the aquifer is thin. It's relatively thin. We can't get water in to the well fast enough in a single well, because, exactly, yeah. So what happens is, can I get wicked geeky on you guys for a second? So you guys know anything about like radio telescopes? So they have these arrays out in the Arizona desert where they have a bunch of these telescopes and they're lined up. And the effect of having 20 telescopes is that it's the equivalent of 1 big telescope. So basically, by putting 5 wells in there, we're essentially mimicking what a well that might be 75 feet in diameter, you know, to reduce that, you know, to reduce that drawdown. So it's sort of a way around it. I mean, well fields, this would be kind of classified as a well field. They're really common in the northeast part of the state and the eastern part of the state, where the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 30s went out and they drove steel pipes in swamps and then manifolded them all together. And there's some well fields that have 30, 40, 50, 60 pipes all manifolded together because they're thin, so they don't have the drawdown, but they spread out that drawdown. They get a little bit out of each well, and so they can manage to get several hundred gallons a minute or more.
Is there any option that as we do, if we take the next step and do the pump test, the long-term pump test is gonna be 5 to 10 days, correct?
Yeah.
Depending on
Yeah.
what DEP gives us approval for, or
Right.
what they require us to do.
Right.
Is there any way that we could push the limit to try and get more than 40 gallons per minute? So during
Yeah,
that
so-
time frame, can we watch the drawdown and see at 40 gallons per minute through all our monitoring wells, it'll stabilize? Will
Right.
we continue to up that discharge until we see that the monitoring wells start to show that the aquifer is
Yeah.
under duress?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, what we would do is, long before we got to that point, Pete, we'd have an idea, because when the wells are installed, we're gonna rate them. So we'll pump them as hard as we can and monitor the water level in the wells and say, all right, if we can do 40, 50, 60 gallons a minute out of this well, then, then we'll
Okay.
approach DEP about that. Because all that is done between the request for site exam and the request for pump test approval. So, so there's a big nut of work that happens between, we meet with DEP and say, this is what we'd like to do, let's identify the permitting snags, which is what basically the request for site exam does. And then DEP says, yeah, we don't see anything that's not manageable, so then we go and we start putting wells in. And and at that point, it's a conceptual, we say, this is what we think is gonna happen, this is what we're gonna test. So, we're gonna put 5 wells in at these locations, and we're gonna rate them, and then once we figure out what the wells can produce, we'll come back and issue a request for pump test approval with, with the rates that we wanna pump them at. So it could be more, but, I'm not gonna sell you that right now.
Understood. So you're saying safe yield, 200 to 225,000 gallons per day?
I think so, yeah, I think so. I think the way these wells would be distributed around this thing, and obviously there are things that we have to test, like what is the nature of the interconnection with Buffinville, from a quantity standpoint, and, if it's strong, then I think that's very achievable.
And with what we've done so far, are you confident that this aquifer would not impact any of the residents further east that have bedrock wells?
I am, Peter. Just the fact that when you and I did that test, we had that one well, BW8, which did have water in it, and it was only an hour, but it didn't, I think we had less than 100th of a foot of drawdown, where we had 0.3 feet, 0.9 feet, and 1.5 feet drawdown on the other monitoring wells. So I think between the fact that it's further to the east, and that till layer seems to be coming up, that's a really strong barrier to groundwater migration and influence. So we're not likely to suck water out of the bedrock that's further to the east where the homeowners are. Virtually all the water's gonna be coming from the other direction. That's my interpretation as of now.
During the testing, was there ever any interest in grabbing a sample and having VOCs and SOCs checked?
So not in this recent one, Robert, but when we tested in the fall, we did collect water quality samples for VOCs and for general chemistry, and the water quality was outstanding. It was excellent. Obviously no VOCs. I mean, there are things that we'd have to test for
Yeah.
now in a prolonged pumping test, the perfluorinated, and people want to see herbicides and pesticides and other
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But in terms of what we saw when we tested that well for 46 hours, the water quality was excellent.
This is gonna be described as a gravel pack well.
Yeah.
On a gravel pack well, does the DEP treat it the same way as a rock well as far as determining the safe yield with the safety factors involved?
No, actually, so the DEP determines safe yield based on 2 factors. One is the available water. So the available water calculation is, take the top of the well, all right, depth to the static water level.
Yep.
Okay, so take that number, say it's 5, whatever the number is. Depth to the top of the well screen, so the well is 60 feet down, so then you have 55 feet. And then 5-foot safety factor on top of the well screen, so subtract 5 from 55, sorry, just playing with numbers.
Okay,
But so that's how they do it. And then there's the
Okay,
second part of
okay.
it is the second factor is called specific capacity, which is gallons per minute per foot of drawdown. Okay, so let's just, in that little example, I said we had 50 feet of available water. Now, let's just say during testing at 40 gallons a minute, we get, we have 10 feet of drawdown at 40 gallons a minute. That's 4 gallons per minute per foot of drawdown. So in this example, 4 gallons a minute per foot of drawdown times 50 feet is 200 gallons per minute. And that's how DEP calculates the safe yield on a gravel well.
Okay. Now, when the initial testing is gonna begin, they don't, or at least, would the purpose be that you're going to pump that until you can get at a rate to where the static level is constant?
Yes,
So that's what you achieve, so.
Yeah, that's called stabilization,
Because the
yeah.
well is what it is.
Yep.
Is when you get the stabilization. So if you're pumping at 37 gallons a minute, and that, the
Yep.
static level is holding steady, it's not going up, it's not going down,
right.
then it's producing 37 gallons a minute.
That's right.
So then you have to take that other mathematical factor of the drawdown and the footage?
Right, except, yes, that's right. So if there's still water, if there's still available water available,
Yeah.
that's a little bit of a tongue twister, but, so if it stabilizes at 37 gallons a minute, but we still have 30 feet of available water,
Right.
we can ramp it up. The problem is if we go in with the 8-inch wells and we do the test on the 8-inch wells, which I would suggest, that's my suggestion, the DEP, if we were doing it, if this was an 8-inch test well and we were gonna put in 24-inch or 36, bigger diameter wells, DEP allows you to double your rate of the pump test
Okay.
for yield, because they know an 8-inch well is not as efficient. There's well losses, it's not as efficient as a larger diameter well, as a 18 or a
Sure,
24-inch well. So they allow you to double it. If you do the pump test on the final well, you don't have that privilege. However, we wouldn't do a pump test at 37 gallons a minute and find out, and then realize that we had 30 feet of available water left. We're gonna know that before we get into the pump test. So we're gonna rate the wells, we're gonna pump them, we're gonna stress them until we can find out how much we can pump them at, and then
Okay,
we'll do the pump test
So
at that
so your
rate.
goal would be to try to go to 5 feet above the screen, to maximize
Yeah,
it?
I'd probably wanna be a little bit more conservative than that, but yeah, I mean, in
Okay.
that shape, we'd wanna maximize the capacity of the wells for sure. Absolutely.
And do you find you do get a greater yield when you do that versus just waiting for the static level to level out based on how much you throttle the outgoing water?
Yeah, so, the problem with that, Robert, is that it can take time. The DEP runs a pump test, their definition historically, and it's changing a little bit for other reasons, but historically is, for 5 days or until stabilization is achieved, whichever comes later. Okay, and they say that because it can
Comes
take,
later,
it
okay.
can take 7 to 10
Yeah,
days
yeah.
for stabilization to occur. And there's a very defined criteria of what DEP stabilization is. It's a quarter inch per 24 hours.
A quarter inch? And that's gonna be difficult if you're gonna be pumping 5 wells at the same time,
Yeah, well,
based on the matrix that you've set up.
right, but, well, that means more water's coming out, but
Right.
it'll delay the stabilization, but not, I mean, if it's gonna stabilize, it's gonna stabilize with the 5 wells pumping.
Yeah.
And, again, I actually suspect it'll stabilize, sooner rather than later. I mean, we pumped that one well last fall at essentially this rate, and it was pretty darn close to stabilization in, I don't know, in 18 hours.
Yeah.
So, and we saw, I remember, if you remember that chart, that graph, we showed the break, when they put it on the logarithmic scale, there was that break in the slope of the drawdown curve. And that's pretty much stabilization.
Okay. Quarter inch. Ooh.
It's not I mean, it's a tough standard, but it's, people get there all the time.
You ready for Beta to join you right now? We've
Sure.
got 2 members sitting here anxiously waiting to come forward.
Yep, yeah.
Sure, so Peter was here to talk about what we did at Buffinville. Bade is here to kind of talk to you about what it would look like to move forward and what it would take us to get to our current infrastructure up by the Heritage School that's getting installed by ExxonMobil. So they're not really gonna be talking about the well development, they're gonna be talking about how to get the water from Buffinville up to our infrastructure and what that might look like.
It's a big map.
Little cockeyed.
fit in the car.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening.
So if Peter asked us to put together kind of a conceptual preliminary idea of potential water main alignment based off of the well locations, you should have a small version of this in your packets too. Essentially, the 5 wells would go to a booster station, which, depending on the quality of the water, depends on the type of treatment that would be there. Since that's very preliminary right now, we have no idea. Kind of just did a 20 by 20 station figuring basic chlorine and hydroxide. So then, based on conversations we had with.
And we're assuming that it won't be under the influence. Because if it was under the influence, that changes things, and then we actually have to do treatment.
Yeah.
So,
Based off
So,
conversations.
just real
sorry.
quick, what that means is a gravel pack well is one type of water quality. Surface water calls for a completely different type of treatment. So because of our proximity to Buffinville, we're gonna have to do pump test and water quality tests to show the DEP that that the groundwater we're pumping out is not under the influence of the surface water. And if it is, it's not the end of the world, we just have to treat it as surface water and treat it differently.
correct.
And then based off of conversations we had with Peter, we developed this alignment that goes up Gale Road and then crosses the spillway. We're doing a conceptual footbridge where the water main would be insulated underneath the footbridge, crossing the spillway. Go up Old Oxford Road and continue along the Army Corps land there before connecting onto Oxford Road and up to the new main that was installed down by Morton Station Road. So about 17,000 feet of main that would have to be installed for that alignment. We're thinking 8-inch right now, just based off of the wells and the amount of water that is anticipated from there. We also put together a preliminary alignment profile for that, just assuming 5 feet of cover based off of the existing contours in the along the alignment. The lowest elevation would be 530, and then your tank goes to 1,005. So it's about 475 feet of head, which is actually completely doable with one pump station based off of the flow rates that we're anticipating too as well.
Really?
I mean, we have to get more into the sizing, but at least at a
Preliminary,
cursory look,
yeah.
it looks like it
That's
works.
good.
So essentially what would happen is the pumps would lift it to the booster and the booster would lift it to the tanks. And if we need, and if we did need more head, then to Peter's point, we could actually add more horsepower to the wells, and the two together would pump together,
Okay.
so.
Would that be a transmission line only, or would that be a combination, transmission and service line? Would you be able to tap it and do water services off of it?
Yeah, you would be able to.
Okay,
You could, the only thing you'd have to check would be the elevation of the user compared to the hydraulic
pressure,
line, just
yeah.
to make sure it's not overpressured.
yep,
But even if it was, you could put in PRVs
right.
to knock it down.
Yeah. On the map, could you point to where the schools are?
It's the school loop right here.
Right
so
there.
These two schools.
So, and are you coming in up Partridge Hill and then going down Oxford Road to get to the schools?
No, we
No.
stay on the Gale Road side. You can see we stay on the east side of Buffinville.
Right, yeah,
So what we're doing is instead of directional drilling like we were talking about before, on the back side of the spillway, there's parking lot on one side by where the Army Corps' office is, and Gale Road kind of takes a 90-degree turn there. And we're proposing a footbridge there that need to propose to the Army Corps that would benefit them, because it would let them have foot traffic from one side of the spillway to the other. Currently now, I believe they have to actually walk over the dam. And then we could just hang the line under that, and from there, we could just get on, that's Old Oxford Road, for a little bit, and then get on Army Corps' private property along the east side of the spillway that goes all the way up to Oxford Road.
okay,
So you know where the spillway ends on Oxford Road, where that barway is, we'd come out right there on Oxford Road, and then we'd head into town that way. And by doing that, we'd also be passing their picnic area, which is where they have a public water supply well that they want to stop using, so we could supply them with water very easily that way. And I think that's what's gonna keep the Army Corps interested in working with us to allow us to do that.
any thought of going under the lake to get right over to what, what's that, H. Putnam Road?
It's AF Putnam.
AF Putnam?
I mean, that was always our original concept, but this
Yeah.
seems
I think
easier.
from a permitting point of view, and also from, I mean, everything we're doing is very preliminary. We have no
Okay.
geotechnical work. Going under the pond is a little, I don't wanna say dicey, we just have to be careful, because we'd have to do a geoprobes across, just to get a sense, is it 50 feet of peat under there? What is the material we're crossing under? Because when you're drilling, you wanna have stable materials that you're going through, because otherwise what happens is the head gets unstable and can literally come up. We don't wanna come up in the middle of the lake.
Isn't there a gas pipe that crosses there?
There
It
is.
does.
Okay, so
Yeah,
this is,
somewhere over.
It's been done.
It's been done
it's
before.
been done, and not only water, but we're talking natural gas right now, correct, that goes under the lake?
I guess one
No, I
question
don't
I
believe-
have is, was that directional drilled or was that dug?
I believe it was directional
It
drill.
was
It was
drilled?
done in the 80s, I
Oh,
believe,
okay, so it probably was.
if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was directional drill.
I mean, I'm not saying it's
But it's-
impossible, but it adds permitting, it adds cost
Yep,
and time.
It was also done by a company with a much bigger budget than I think
yeah.
we would be planning on using, unfortunately. If unlimited resources, I mean, sure, with full cooperation of the Army Corps,
Well, it would seem like it would be shorter by going directly across, go underneath the lake where the water source is.
A little bit,
Yeah.
but not
You don't save
not a
much.
tremendous amount.
Yeah, okay.
so, and then the second part to really consider here is to do, in Peter's report, he mentioned what the next steps might be, what they'd look like, to get on site and to drill the five 8-inch wells, right, and do all, his work, perform the pump test, do a final report and MEPA filing. So he put numbers associated with that. Part of that would also be, we'd have to develop the site also so that this equipment could get access to this area of the property. Right now, it's just a somewhat improved cart path that won't be adequate. But because the elevation where we drill the wells is so high, I believe we could possibly take 20 to 25 feet off the surface of that, which was pretty much all gravel from that first part of drilling, and use that to create the roadway to develop to get into here from the Burns property that we're also gonna purchase on Gale Road. So I think to look at the next, again, if we move forward, the next step is more than just, it's gonna encompass more than just drilling. We're gonna have to do some site improvements and really look forward to what we're gonna want, what the end result is gonna be, so we don't just waste money doing one thing that's gonna change after, so. That's the nice thing about doing the 8-inch test wells now, is they'll be our permanent wells. We won't have to drill there again. If we develop the site and get that roadway to 80% completion, so we have good access there, and then it'll just be, as we move forward, it'll just be completing the work we've done, instead of redoing work or changing the route, then I think we're still putting, I guess, good money into this project, so.
How much of this is gonna be available by grant money?
Well, I think the next step is to take Peter's numbers here, ask Beta to come up with some preliminary site work numbers to get us the access that we're talking about. Kind of formalize some type of design of both properties together. Go to town meeting, purchase the properties, get those in our name, and then go sit with DEP and see what's available. We do have that $2.5 million grant that we got for the East Charlton Waterline connection. That money's sitting there. The Office of Workforce Development's been contacting us, asking us what we're planning on doing. I've told them about this project, so they seemed interested. So if we can put some numbers together and you give me the go-ahead to go meet with DEP and come up with, try and get them to start this, to fund this next round of exploration, I think we might be able to get some from there. At a previous meeting, I also met with Marty Suberg, who's the commissioner of DEP, about that $5 million bond bill that's there. He said the money's still there. Maybe we present this to him and ask him to start drawing on that to fund this next round of work. We've sat with Congressman Neal. I think Congressman Neal will be more so when we get this next round done and we say this is what it's gonna take to fully develop and get it there, then I think we'll turn to him to look for help as well.
Total budget? Can't sell it if you don't say it.
It's difficult to say at this point, again, because we have no geotechnical work, but, I mean, we've been kicking numbers around, going back and forth, and we're figuring anywhere between 8 and 15 million
8 and 15?
to do everything. And it's a big range just because.
Yeah, it's a big range, it still seems reasonable when you, what you're looking at. But to be clear, though, that's not gonna solve our water needs total.
For when? For what time frame?
Uh,
I think once, our current water use is approximately 105,000 gallons per day right now.
Yeah.
I think when the Casella water line is done, the ExxonMobil school loop is done, if we go by what their proposed connections are, we'll be right around, if we go consecutive and take what we would be responsible for, we will be right around 220,000 gallons per day, if we wanted to do the entire system with this.
Yep.
I think safely, to break it apart, I propose that this source would do anything, any part of the Charlton previous Charlton water system, and you'd still use Southbridge to do their initial MTA service area, which was 169 Stafford Street to Mass Pike, and then Route 20 west from Route 169 to Mass Pike in that area. So that way there, our system's still kind of split in two, our use will be split in two. We can get this up and running, see how it's going, and as we grow, we can decide if we wanna have this one source do our entire system, or keep it split and kinda differentiate it however we choose based on growth. But I think for what, again, so there's a couple, I guess, decisions you need to make tonight. The first one is, are we gonna purchase the property? Are we gonna go to town meeting and ask them for funding to purchase the property? And once that decision is made, once we purchase the property, then it's just keep on taking small steps like we've been doing and just chinking away at it until we keep making progress or until we hit the brick wall.
So what we're looking at is about, what, 210 to buy the property?
Correct.
All right, so that's what we'd be banking. We've already made an investment there, and our determination, what we've been told here is there's a probability of somewhere between 175,000 and 230,000 gallons of water there. You know, depending on how things go.
Yep.
So, and I hear what you're saying, Peter, to my comment is, you know, in a 5-year plan, it probably wouldn't service the whole town to where we would just tell Southbridge, turn the faucet off. But with the combination, again, it's a start, and if we were able to find another well field or develop another well field in another area, then we would be able to be completely, or possibly go independent.
Correct. Well, as Peter said, it's not your end-all be-all, but it's a good start. And then to
Yeah.
find supplemental, maybe bedrock wells, where, again, you can talk to many people and find half a dozen or a dozen 100-gallon per minute bedrock wells that have been drilled in town. And maybe just try and source one of those, which will give you another 60 to 75 or 100,000 gallons per day to augment this, and then just continue to grow the system.
And Russell, from a parachute point of view, is if we gotta get out of this property, would that be relatively easy for the town to recoup their money?
Well, I don't, given the grant money that we're taking on the one property,
Right.
there are some restrictions with that, correct?
Correct. If we use the grant money to purchase the Phillips property, then that property we're gonna end up owning. The Burns property, which is the one that has Gale Road access,
Yep,
that's separate. We'll keep that separate, and that would be a saleable item in the future.
okay,
So that'd be 8 acres with 100
okay,
feet.
again, just, again,
So I
worst
don't-
case,
I don't think that's a bad deal, and I don't think the town would have any problem whatsoever reselling that property.
okay,
But the back half, the original portion we're looking at, that would have to remain as open space or conservation or something like that, which, I mean, to any of the neighbors down there,
yep,
I
so
don't
what,
think that's a loss.
right,
So,
if we were to purchase that alone, all we have is an easement to get to it?
If you don't, correct, you'd have to continue with the Army Corps and develop a permanent easement. Right now, it's a
With the
temporary
Army
easement.
Corps?
Yes, that's how
Okay,
we're
Not
accessing.
not with the,
No,
not
right-
with the-
Right now, we're accessing the property through Army Corps land, through an easement with them.
okay,
So the Army Corps has been very cooperative this entire process. So, again, when I actually talked to them about this route and the footbridge and stuff like that, and they said to just get them something, get something on paper so they can kind of look at it, get the initial comments from them, and they can just start to push it up the ladder.
just increase the popularity of their disc golf following down there to have a footbridge,
It might.
so. But, I think it's both or none on the properties. And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
We've all come
Yeah,
to that
yeah.
conclusion. I don't think that the investment in the property is gonna hurt the town in any way, shape, or form, regardless of what the outcome is from your studies and your tests. Or even if things are successful testing-wise, and we go down the path and ultimately determine that we're not going to do the wells, we're not going to do the water system, just because we wanna stay with Southbridge, we like them so much, or whatever, but I do think that it's always nice. Charlton has had no options whatsoever up until this point in time, right? I mean, we don't have an option right now for water.
a viable source.
Yeah, and it would be great to have one, whereas with all the spots all over town that are just not an option because of contamination or natural occurring elements, I think this is a big step that we've already put a lot of money into, and it's not throwing good money after bad at this point in time. It's still a good investment. So
So
that's
the-
how I feel about it.
If I may, the article that will be on the town warrant to purchase these two properties,
Yes.
approximately 50% is funded by a grant
For one parcel.
for one
So you're
parcel.
purchasing two parcels.
Correct.
One of those parcels, we got grant approval, that'll be a 50% reimbursement for the cost of the property and also the survey and maybe the title search.
All right, so let's just put both properties at $100,000 each.
Okay.
So we're getting a grant of $50,000 on the first property.
Yes.
Okay, so then we've got to come up with $50,000 to purchase the
Well,
remainder.
no, we have to come up with the full amount and they'll reimburse us after the
Okay,
purchase.
okay, all right.
So we're gonna have to come up with
All
the
right,
full.
so on the latter one is another $100,000. We
Correct.
have to come up with that money. Now, the monies that we have talked about using for this, is any of it taxpayers' money, or is it
No.
monies that we already have in our account?
This is money in your capital improvement account. you did the ExxonMobil settlement, part of that agreement, or part of what was done is they put $1.5 million and set it aside into a capital improvement account for water, for a future water exploration, for future water infrastructure improvements or repairs. More so probably for repairs, but because our system is so new, the amount we're paying per year for repairs is minimal. So I think to take 200,000 from that line item and invest it here, it with, again, won't have any effect on the taxpayer per se, and it's just money that's sitting there for you to use for somewhat for this purpose.
It's money already dedicated to our water system.
Yep, definitely.
So, and I think it's very, very important that when you do go over the article, it's made known to the taxpayer that it does not affect the tax rate.
Definitely.
So the money's already allocated, it's just merely an appropriation.
I will correct you, Peter, is that nowhere in the ExxonMobil agreement does it say that 1.5 million is to go to the water and sewer. But what it clearly says, crystal clear, says the remaining funds shall support the water department, parentheses, operation, capital, expansion, design, and the parentheses, as appropriated by town meeting. So out of the $750,000 that was sent to this town, that got put into the bank to pay off the debt, betterments, and things like that, the remaining funds shall go to support the water department, not to go not to go to the selectman's office.
But that's not what happened.
Well, I'm just saying, just because
I'm-
that's not what
I'm
happened, doesn't make it right.
But
And this is
from-
why we have that
from what-
article on the town meeting.
Correct, but from
That
what we,
needs to be upped, needs to be taken off the very last. It needs to get pushed in front of, like somewhere around 12 or 13 is where this needs to get addressed before it goes and gets spent. Because the intention was, not according to Robert Lemansky, but according to a release by Robin Craver, April 12, 2016.
but the one thing that we have to bank on is that no matter what happens, we still have $1.4 million sitting in that account that we can allocate this $208,000 for, to purchase this property. So the funding's there, regardless of what happens with the remaining $2.2 million that we've discussed in the past. If that does get put towards the public safety complex building, our funding of $1.4 million is still there, it's still whole, and it's still available to fund this purchase.
Right. And that'll be the decision of the
Correct.
town meeting.
Yes.
Members, as far as where those funds should go.
Do you guys have any other questions for Beta?
No, I think we're in good shape, but
No, thanks, guys.
looking bright,
Yeah.
looking bright. I think there's a glimmer, there's some sparks there. We got some flint down there. So,
You too?
good.
All right. So I guess moving forward, did you guys come up with any type of cost estimate to do the site work, to do the next phase of drilling?
Very preliminary.
Okay.
I would like to sit with you to go over
Alright.
exactly what it is before presenting it. I just don't wanna throw a number out there without
Okay.
kinda going over what the road you would like to be and
Yeah.
that whole path, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. I just, again, I think if everything moves forward, the next step is gonna be for me to start meeting with DEP again
Yeah.
to say, this is what we've done, this is where we are, here's the update, and this is what our next step, this is what the planned next step is, and
Yeah, I mean,
where's
once,
the funding?
yeah, we just sit and talk about what exact path you want and kind of the limits of the work, then it won't take long to pull that together.
All right, excellent.
Great.
If I may ask, Peter, the overburden that's there right now.
Yeah.
So, if, again, we're gonna bring this into phase 2, 3, 4, and 5, like Peter had mentioned, the wisest thing to do is to put in an access road. So if the tree company went down there and popped the trees and the excavator pulled out the stumps, what kind of material is that initial overburden, the first 5, 8, 10, 15 feet?
Yeah, so better part of, between 20, 25 feet is a coarse mix sand and gravel. It's pretty nice
So
material.
bulldozer's gonna have an easy time down there, as
Yes.
long as it's big enough.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, there's no boulders.
There's no boulders.
No.
Okay,
Excavator and a truck, and you'll be moving that material and laying it out. You'll make the road as you pull it off-site.
And we don't need base road material because it's already there.
Well, I think you'd have to, where the road is going, some of it's kind of in some low spots, you might have to kind of muck out some of that stuff and.
Oh, yeah,
go-
by all means,
but
by
no,
all
that-
means, but,
That'd
yeah.
make a great road base, I think, for a true road base where it's really wet, you might bring some rock in or something like that and put this over it, but I think cost savings there would be kind of enormous,
Okay,
just because the material's there.
just because
Oh,
of the existing
definitely.
material.
It's nice material.
And just as a sort of a reference, so Kendra and I were talking about this a little bit this afternoon, that, so we're looking at 5 wells at 130-something feet deep. If we took off 25 feet, that's 5 feet, that's 25 feet times 5, it's 125 feet. That's almost the cost of a well.
Right, but where are
So,
we?
in other words, avoided drilling costs.
Right, but at some point, we gotta be careful, because we've got the floodplain level.
Yeah, but you're,
What,
we're,
529 was the?
yeah,
Yes.
529, and the elevation right now is at 565.
We're-
So,
it's
yeah,
that
So
high.
maybe we can sell some material?
You could, it's nice material.
Probably
Use the gravel and then the rest is great septic sand.
Right, so if you did, I mean, if you took off 25 feet, you're basically, that saves you the cost of one well. Which is not, I mean,
No, they're gonna be expensive,
it's, yeah.
as much as
Like
no
getting
one
one
wants
well
to
for free.
mention it. Okay,
Great. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
It's just got pretty pictures on it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We'll hang that up somewhere. Till someone asks me what it means. So I'll have Sue explain it.
Do his best.
Yep.
Muddle through it.
I was remiss a little bit earlier at the beginning of the meeting. I wanted to introduce Dave Cantwell as a new member of the board and welcome him.
Thank you.
And,
board Dave.
yeah,
Welcome aboard.
and we can move on with what, site plan review, Peter? And you ready to move on?
Sure, unless you,
I think we've done everything else up into new business, so.
yeah. So the first item under new business is the site plan review for 166 Worcester Road. I own that property, so I'm gonna recuse myself at this time. There is a copy, there's a full set of the site plan right here if you need to review, and there's a smaller sheet that shows it there. What is,
Well, before you recuse yourself, would you mind giving us an explanation, seeing as no one knows it better than you?
Sure, so what we're proposing to do is, it's at the site of the old Charlton Motel. It's, we're proposing a new 3,200 square foot, commercial building. We're not sure of the actual use yet, we're just trying to permit it. As far as sewer goes, the old septic system for the Charlton Motel was designed for, I think, 8 units. And it was torn down, so the current septic system is more than adequate to handle the existing building and the new building. And then you'll see the water line connections will be done by ExxonMobil as part of their work, moving forward. So
So,
right,
Peter, there's really nothing here for us to approve or disapprove.
every site plan that goes to planning board comes before you guys for
Okay,
comment,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just something that we've been doing, and again, because it's connecting the water,
Mm-hmm.
you guys should review it and let them know if you have any comments on it or not.
Thank you. Anyone want to see the larger version?
No.
I'd be afraid to unfold it.
Huh?
I'd be afraid to unfold it.
Well, if we have nothing to do with it, why did he have to excuse himself and
Well, I don't know.
what are we
Because they're
supposed to be
just-
doing about it, other than acknowledging the fact that it exists, assuming that he want to tie into water, that well adequate as well as their sewage.
Right. I have no comments, Mr. Chairman. Or objections. Again, it's a straightforward site plan.
Yep. I think it's just no comments or objections noted. That's all.
Anybody else, Jen,
No,
Dave, no?
pretty straightforward.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Moving on.
Peter can come back, you can come in, Peter.
the gravel lots.
We really have very little to do or say about it, so.
No, it's, again, it's just, it's the process, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, under new business. It's two separate items, but pretty much the same topic. One for the Phillips property and one for the Burns property. To purchase these properties with the Chapter 30B procurement laws, in order to do it without having to go to bid, we have to declare it as a unique property acquisition. And part of the process there is for the commission to vote that, and then go ahead and put and advertise that in the Central Register 30 days, at minimum 30 days before purchasing the property, or if doing the final PNS on the property. So, if we can just review the memorandums, it kind of describes what we're doing and why. I think if you wouldn't mind just, again, declaring each parcel separately, make a motion to
I'll
declare.
make a motion, we declare the Phillips property at Gale Road, map 72, block B, lot 9, approximately 20 acres, as a unique property.
Second.
A second on that, any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Great, so I'll put that in the Central Register and get that one going. If we could just do the same thing for the Burns.
I'll make a motion, we declare the Burns property, listed as map 72A, block A, lot 10, approximately 7.92 acres, as a unique property.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Was there a second for that?
Yeah,
Jen
Jen's-
seconded.
Yeah, Jen,
Good, okay,
Jen
thank you.
seconded it.
Thank you, Jim.
Then I guess the next step would be if you will authorize me to do a title search for both properties, just to get that process going as well. Unless you want to wait till after town meeting authorizes the approval.
Make a motion, subject to town meeting, that Peter order the title search for both the Phillips and Burns property.
Second?
Yeah, so you're gonna just put the order in with Mr. Cosgrove?
Well, I'll wait till after, the motion to
Yeah.
subsequent to town meeting.
Can we get a quote on that?
Sure,
Okay,
oh, definitely.
yeah. A title search, $300, is that what it should be?
Probably a little
250,
more.
so
I
you're
thought they
probably
were, I
right,
thought they
yeah.
were like 6 or 7.
No, again,
Okay.
Two of them, right?
no,
600, two different pieces of property.
yeah, for two,
I'll ask them.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've just seen it, we've gone through a couple title searches, about $300. And we don't need title insurance, do we need title insurance?
I'll ask.
No,
I'll ask. You don't think so?
I don't think so, but
I don't know.
that's my feeling.
I don't buy title insurance. That's why you pay lawyers, and that's why you have a title search. Because if it's not right, then the people who did the search need to be responsible.
Who seconded that?
I did.
I don't think we voted on it.
Green?
Do you want to call for a vote on the title search?
Oh, yeah, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I didn't, I just thought we were gonna do
Just
the
do his
title
job.
search. I
Just let him do his
didn't
job.
think it needed a
That's
vote for
good.
that. I mean,
No, I'd like, yeah,
It's-
that'd be great. We need a vote.
it's kind of a standard thing, but, okay, Green Communities Grant.
Sure, so the Green Communities Grant is a grant that we accessed last year to help fund some of the LED upgrades we did at the sewer treatment plant. There's another round of funding coming out this year, and Kara asked if we had anything else that we might be able to put forward to apply for with the grant, so. One of the things she asked for is what we had for electric motors that run on VFDs, or variable frequency drives, which allow you to operate that electric motor at not at just off or 100%. Allows you to vary the power going to it, so it varies the speed of that electric motor. Currently, we use electric motors and blowers to aerate our EQ tanks 1, 2, and 3. Those are older electric motors, older blowers that are single state, either on or off. So we run those 24/7. They blow air into the EQ tanks, go through a diffuser, and that air helps knock down the BOD levels and helps oxygenate that waste going into the treatment treatment facility to help us treat the ammonia. Because part of treating BOD and ammonia is the amount of oxygen, dissolved oxygen that's in that waste as it goes through the process. So in looking at that, I talked to Zach from Veolia, and we worked with a vendor about what we could do to improve that for electrical cost savings. And you'll see the attachment that's there is his estimate that we provided to the Green Communities Grant people to apply for the grant. And you'll see it's provide and install premium efficiency motors for tanks 1, 2, and 3. Provide and install VFD drives for tanks 1, 2, and 3. And provide and install new blowers for tanks 1, 2, and 3. The one caveat is that customer, us, we will supply the DO sensors and the controllers that will control all of the new instrumentation. And the reason we did that is because Kara said we had about $100,000 to work with to apply for the grant, or a little bit less. And we can purchase the DO sensors and controllers through Veolia's discount for less than what this vendor could provide them to us for. So again, as you read through the estimate, it's engineer, program, and startup VFDs using DO sensors and feedback to maintain a constant DO level in the tanks based on the DO set point and the VFDs. So, as I said, right now, we're just blowing air into these EQ tanks at 100% 24/7. And we're not taking any measurements. We don't know what the dissolved oxygen is inside those EQ tanks. What this upgrade will allow us to do is a more efficient way to provide air to those diffusers, which we could have DO sensors actually in those tanks and have an actual set point of what we want that DO level to be, so that these electric motors and pumps would operate at the correct percentage to get us the desired DO that we're looking for, or that Zach's looking for, to operate the plant most efficiently. So,
And with a discount from Veolia, Green Communities grant money, how much grant money is?
I believe it's 100% grant.
100% of it,
Yes.
okay.
So I think our only cost would be less than $5,000 to provide the DO probes and the controllers necessary. And the Green Communities grant will provide the rest.
And you think it's,
Duh.
and it saves $18,000 a year in energy.
Correct.
And we don't want that. We don't want that.
So, again, I'm just putting it on your
Incredibility.
radar. We've
It's-
applied for it, and that if we do get it, you're gonna have the cost to provide the DO meters and the controller to help us finalize what's getting installed.
That'd be a fantastic windfall.
It would be pretty nice, yes, on all sorts of different avenues. One, the power savings, two, just the control you
The
get.
power savings is huge,
The power savings would be.
because that's on an annual basis,
Yes,
the 18,000.
again, because these run 24/7 at 100%, so.
How
To be
big are
able,
those fans, How big are those fans?
they're not that, it's like a enclosed blower, it's almost like a turbo that runs off an electric motor that just feeds air down a PVC pipe to a diffuser on the bottom of the tank.
Usually on those VFD motors, the big savings is the starting. Because instead of just banging on, what it does is it ramps up and then ramps down. So you're saying these motors, which, again, it's great that we're gonna replace them and have it cost nothing, or next to nothing, but they constantly run,
You're correct, they don't stop.
okay? We have additional use for this grant though elsewhere, with all the pumps we have down there.
Most of the other pumps are on VFDs already.
They have switched them?
Yeah, we've been doing some upgrades over the last few years, so in talking to Zach and John Oatley about where would be the best place what's your priority number one?
Right.
To do this type of upgrade, this is their priority number one.
Most of our pump stations aren't VFDs.
No, our pump stations are
No, that would be a huge savings
not.
there.
That would be a huge expense.
Well, again, this is costing us $5,000 for $100,000 worth of
Ne-
stuff
so
and.
Next year, maybe if we can,
And $18,000 worth of electrical savings.
so if we could do it on an annual, again, the other I believe the pump stations, I think you could install VFDs to run the existing motors. You wouldn't change those motors out per se. You would just purchase the VFDs, install them, and have it be a soft start to help with that problem.
Okay, good.
It's a very cute little house, too. The pump.
Oh, that pump, on 161?
Yeah, when we get to it.
Okay. Old business, the FY 2020 warrant, review and approve articles. So as I looked through the town meeting warrant, I actually put a copy of the warrant in here up to any zoning bylaws, because those were about another 15 pages, so I didn't include those. But you'll see, I think the only articles we have of concern that pertain directly to us is Article 7 to start, which would be the water department budget. And I've included a copy of that budget at the back of the warrant. And also Article 8, which is the sewer department budget, which is also there.
Peter, part of our water budget is the indirect costs,
Yes.
and you and also the finance board is gonna look for the past method.
Yes.
Yes, well, I found it,
Okay.
okay, which, let's pass that down to Peter, here's one for you. Maybe you can, Peter, Jen can share this, and I'll share this with. And this is back from, this is for the 2014 budget, but this was in 2012. And on the front page, it talks about methodology, town budget, then goes water sewer budget. So what they did was they took the entire budget for the town, took the entire budget for water and sewer, and then it came up with a percentage and based that percentage on how they were gonna do the indirect costs. Now, the new method, or the method that I called the new method, which is basically doing what? Is it doing the same thing?
Yes.
It does exactly the same thing?
It takes our operating budget,
Right,
divides it by the total budget of the town, and comes up with that percentage.
okay, okay. Again, I think in a couple of years, once our debt drops
Yes.
and is gone away with, then our budget will reduce.
So you'll see that in water this year versus last year, because we're not carrying any debt payments because they were paid off.
Yeah,
So our water indirect cost pretty much was
Okay.
cut.
okay,
In sewer, when that debt is paid off, because right now our sewer budget, our total sewer budget is about half and half. It's about 1.1 for operations and maybe $1 million for debt payment.
yeah,
So once that debt payment goes away in 2 or 3 years, then those indirect costs will be cut in half.
okay,
Now, I'm trying to work with Donna to not use debt as part of our indirect costs, but it's not gonna happen for this year.
okay, so then what will happen is, in 2 or 3 years, then we're gonna be sailing away pretty clean,
Yes.
because the debt will be so low.
The debt, correct, we won't have any debt
Right,
for
but
sewer.
that doesn't, again, my point is, the methodology just didn't seem to be fair, because it's gonna end up, it's really not fair. We were either overcharged, or we're gonna be, or we're gonna be underpaying when time goes on.
So-
Okay,
But that is the same it's our total budget divided into the town's total budget to get that percentage.
Couple years, we'll switch it back.
they will, no, they will happen, it will happen, it will happen, just, yeah, yeah.
Let me get them going.
All right, so do you want a motion to go forward with the water budget as it is?
Please, that way if someone has any questions at town meeting, I can just stand up and say that the commission's voted to support the budget as it's presented.
And articles all in one motion?
Well, no, I think, if you wanna do the 2 budgets together, you could do those in one motion, unless there's something in the sewer budget you have questions about, but, Sure, I mean, you could do them all at once if you want. Unless you want to have discussion on some of them. I know Mr. Lemansky talked about trying to get Article 18 taken out of order, but
All right, well, I'll make a motion, we, approve the budgets as printed for both water and sewer.
Second.
Any other discussion on them?
So you're talking for Article 7 and 8.
All right, together. None of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Article 17 is to purchase both parcels of property off of Gill Road. Again, in the article, in the main heading, it's gonna say approximately 35.5 acres for the Phillips property. In the motion, that'll be changed to 20, because that'll be what we're accurately gonna purchase. And then we'll just say it's gonna be coming from the receipts reserved for appropriation for water capital improvements.
And does not affect
Correct, and it is.
the tax rate or
Yeah.
people's tax bill. I'll make a motion that we approve Article 17.
We have a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And then
Article 18.
Article 18 is the one to talk about the remaining ExxonMobil monies that was put into a receipt reserve for appropriation that went into the general fund. I believe there's about 2.28 or $2.2 million left there. They spent 450 of it
Because
previously.
it's already been pilfered. That's
been-
how I would,
it's been
that's
a-
how I would put it.
It's been appropriated. Town meeting appropriated it.
Town meeting appropriated it under the understanding that was already in the general fund, where according to the press release,
Yep.
those monies were supposed to be deposited into the water and sewer account to be appropriated through town meeting. That's where it was supposed to be. So if it's in that lockbox, only town meeting can take it out. Well, what was happened is the town meeting people were led astray because they had bad information. Because the information was it's coming out of the general fund. And that money shouldn't have been in the general fund. It should have been there. And all I'm doing is just fighting for the fact that this town's got some issues still with water, even though, again, we've got these great projects going on. But we don't know when this is really gonna end and how much monies are really needed. And it should be put into that fund. And I hear the argument or the statement is that, you know, payments were paid by the taxpayers. That's still, that statement is still out there as far as not necessarily being valid, because the monies that were paid were taken out of the US Gen funds that paid for the debt service for the water project that was originally put in some 15 or 18 years ago.
So you have Article 18.
Which is in the wrong position, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I understand that, but you're not, I don't think you'll be able to get town meeting to take it out of order.
All you can do is try.
But rather than, because they're looking to use these funds to offset some of the cost of that public safety complex building, rather than making it look like we are against the public safety complex building, I think it would be better to try and amend the motion made to fund the public safety complex building to not come from this portion. So that way there, we're not.
And I
we're
don't
not-
disagree with you. I think-
You're not making a statement that appears to be that you're against the public safety complex building and you want this money. That way there, because we don't have any motions yet of where they're planning to fund Article 16? Article 16 is right before us.
Which is,
which is new public safety.
Okay,
public
yeah.
building. So I think once that motion's made, if they have funding for that motion from this line item, the time to talk about it would be there, to frame the case that we're not opposed to the public safety complex building. We just believe this funding, based on the agreement that was done in the press release, should be set aside for the water, for water now and for water future. And with the proposed projects we have going on, like Buffinville, and what we might need for funding in the future to develop that, it's a good source for that money to stay.
I think that, to Mr. Lemansky's point, I don't disagree with anything you say, Rob. I think
No, that's okay. I agree
with
with the
that
strategy.
issue.
The strategy is a good
with
strategy.
that issue.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a very fast ball to follow. And unless you're on top of the situation like you are, it's very hard for the taxpayer to see it going back and forth. Where is it? It's under this cup, it's under that cup.
Yeah.
That's really what it appears to be.
Well, that's what we've been living with.
So I think if, potentially, if Article 16 is tweaked a little bit, if the funding is sought from that, and it's simply put, if the funding is not used for Article 16, then the funds shall be appropriated to the water and the sewer. Because the issue comes in, it's a twofold vote on 16.
Yes. To start.
If I may, as far as the language goes,
Yep.
somewhere along the line, as the funds came into the town, the $7.5 million, is items got paid,
Yep.
and there was a boxcar that says water and sewer on it. The balance was supposed to go in that boxcar, okay? And then towns voters can take it out. What happened was, someone came in and derailed it to where they created this other, or created a new boxcar. The water and sewer boxcar all of a sudden got a $1.5 million tag on it. And then the other boxcar, the new one, just got the remaining funds to go to the general fund. And since it's been in the general fund, they've already used it last year, where they took monies out to do some soft costs for the, for the new building. So, or a place for the funding to come from. So I don't think we need to create a whole new avenue. The avenue's already there. What we gotta do is take the funds that went into the wrong account and have them put into the correct account. As stated publicly back in 2017.
I don't disagree with you, but if the money's not there by the time the article comes, then it's a non-issue.
Well, no, and I believe, and again, I don't mind having to tote the load here of getting up and amending the article to take away, or at least to change the language, because Peter, when do you expect we'll see that language? As far as the funding goes, because is it in here? Am I missing it?
No, I don't think you'll see the motion until that night.
To that night, in other words, the last minute is when the
That's the way
motion comes.
most motions are done. That's the way they've always
Yeah, I
done
know,
it.
yeah, I know. Yeah, they get the print and press, yeah.
No, I mean, so maybe the Thursday before,
Okay,
Mary will print the full warrant with the motions. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen, they're meeting tomorrow night. I don't know if they'll be voting on motions per se tomorrow. Or if they're just gonna be voting to support or not support the articles. Usually the motions are the last thing to happen, because there's a
Right.
lot of moving parts in most of them.
I guess, is the commission in favor of putting the stake in the ground and making a claim that these funds belong into the water and sewer department for the town meeting then to go and determine how they're gonna be spent? Or do we sit on our hands and say, take it again, just like we did with the Conoco money?
Like, that's, again, that's your decision, you're gonna have to, I think,
Yeah.
whatever you wanna do on town meeting, it should be a vote of the board, so that when somebody stands up and references what's happening, it's a vote, the board voted to ask. And I wouldn't frame it as it's ours, I would ask that town meeting consider redirecting or saving that money for future water projects and just fully fund the public safety building from the other avenues.
Right, and the voters will make that choice when they go and vote the override.
Earmark it for where it was
Correct.
originally.
Just
Earmark.
trying to make the case that again, the board feels that that $2.2 million was part of that settlement, and it's needed for future water development. So, or you can just sit back and see if it passes and see how long it stays, or where it goes from there.
I think we should do, again, my opinion is we should do something,
Yeah.
not just say, yeah, okay, go ahead, that's all right.
We have to be careful.
I just think the better you can frame it, the better you can inform people of it. It's not an us versus them, it's just this is what and this is why.
Yeah.
And see if they agree with us or not. And if they say no, that money should be reimbursed to taxpayers because Millennium money was used to pay that down, and if the water project didn't happen, then the taxpayers would have gotten that Millennium money, then, I mean, the arguments are the arguments.
No.
And let the taxpayer decide, let the voters.
The voters made the decision to use the Millennium money
Yep.
to do what they did with it.
Right.
It wasn't the selectman's office, wasn't this office, it was the voters decided to do that. So, this guilt trip of saying, well, the voters ended up, being, deprived of those funds because that money went for the water system. So now it's time to pay them back.
Yeah, I think it'll also give the voters there a chance to kind of let them decide where they want the money spent. Do they want it to be set aside for future public water supply development, and to take care of our infrastructure, or do they want to take it and they think $1.5 million is enough for us and put it towards this new public safety complex building, so. I think it's a good place to put that question forward and let them decide. See what happens, so I think if you want to move forward with it, somebody should make a motion, the board should vote on it, and then we can discuss that at the town meeting at the right time.
I'd like to make a motion to amend, which article is gonna be, Peter, 15 or 14?
16.
16? To amend the Article 16, so to read that the funds are not to come from ExxonMobil reserves.
Get a second on that, please.
Second.
I'll give it before, that keeps it simple, rather than try to
It does.
explain, this
Yep.
belongs there, this belongs there. Okay, all right.
Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, I'm sorry, you can hear me? Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
okay, yeah, so it was unanimous.
All one.
The entire board.
All right, Peter, I'll get you all briefed up on this when we get up there. Yeah.
Walk the plank, is that what it is?
There you go.
Get out there.
It's okay, it's pretty wide plank.
Get out there and earn your money. Yeah, it's still an end, I don't care how wide it is, it's not gonna fall off the side.
Sometimes it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You're
that,
just gonna fall in water.
I know, fair enough.
so that brings us to 18,
To Article 18, if necessary.
if necessary.
So if Article 16 passes with that funding spent, then there's nothing for us to do, it will be just passed over
Postponed
indefinitely.
indefinitely, yep.
Otherwise, we'll just put it forward to, and if it's not used, if it's not, if your amendment passes to amend Article 16 and it passes not using ExxonMobil funds, do we still have to do Article 18?
I don't see any reason why, because it's a clear message to, and I, again, does the,
And even if,
even if one,
let's just say 16 does pass, and there is some funding to take it from, a certain portion from ExxonMobil. 16 still has to pass
Ballot,
ballot,
correct.
and that would be in the fall?
You know, I shouldn't say that. Depending on how they word that motion, if they say it can be raised by taxation and they can fit it under the levy limit and they can borrow under the levy limit, then they will not have to go to ballot.
yeah, how are they gonna fit 15, 17, 20 million in taxation? I mean,
Under.
yeah, under 2.5?
Yeah.
No, again, it just won't fit.
It can fit.
Yeah,
Whether they choose to do that or not, I don't know. My only point is, it doesn't have to go to ballot. Should it go to ballot? Has the routine been to, step one is get through town meeting, step two, go get your debt exclusion to fund the project? Then yes. Does it have to? Technically, no. So, but yes, the next step would be ballot question, like I said, for a debt exclusion.
So if it were to go to ballot, then it would be most likely in the fall.
Is there a general election for the state in the
I
fall?
have no idea.
It might not be till next, unless they call for a special election, it might not be till next spring. They would probably call for a special, they would, if Article 16 passes, my guess is they would call for a special election to be done sometime throughout the summer.
Yep. If there's not gonna be one in the fall, which there's not.
Correct, I don't believe there's one.
I don't think so. Okay. So, if it didn't pass the second fold,
Yes,
and it was voted to take money out of the ExxonMobil money, then we should still potentially vote on Article 18 and not pass it over, correct? Get what I'm saying?
No.
so if it fails step two, then Article 18 will take place and get transferred to us.
Correct.
It wouldn't
Well,
hurt us,
that's
but-
just like, why do people think that it automatically went to where the other people put it? It belongs, there was an error made, that's how I look at it. It wasn't, we shouldn't have to be fighting for this. There was an error made,
I
and
agree with you, Rob, but we have to. That's the long and the short of it. I agree we shouldn't have to, but we
Yeah.
do. So, we are.
Okay,
Moving on.
moving on. May 20th meeting is the night of town meeting.
So you want support of that?
If you want, sure, if you want, well, it's gonna be a two-part motion, right? I mean, Sure.
Well, didn't we vote on one part already?
What are you voting on?
16.
Yep,
Yep.
sure, so if you wanna make a motion,
Make a motion that we support Article 18. As printed.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
yeah, I have the same problem I had before, is how did it get into the RRFA fund or account? How did it get there? Someone had to go and, yeah, I think this is where it should go. That's not right, but
it got there.
again, I don't wanna be here all night.
That's another
we got-
meeting.
We got the Bruins game on, we got the Celtics game on, we got a Red Sox game on, all right now, trifecta.
We're working on it.
There's a bookie paying 8-1.
I don't know anything about that.
A friend of mine was telling me that, I don't think it's crazy.
You guys did vote on this, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so, next item is your Monday, May 20th, our next meeting, May 20th, 2019 was scheduled. As typical, the second meeting of May falls on the same night as town meeting. Just recommend we cancel our regular meeting for May 20th and just push everything off till June 3rd.
Why don't you just leave the agenda empty and then, the week before, just cancel it, if there's no reason to meet, right?
I just wanted to kind of bring it up here, and if that's the case, we can do
Well,
that.
just in case
In
anything,
case something comes up.
yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
anything
Yeah,
changes,
'cause more than
still
likely we-
posted.
Nothing will come up, but it's there if we need it.
Will do. Next, North Sturbridge Road Pump Station repairs. We've discussed this in the past. There's that one pump that has the issues with the rail and what's going on there. Working with Zach, we've been trying to get prices from contractors to get in there and do it, to do the work for us. Helgerson's not interested, they don't do that type of repair. Ronnie Gothier Excavating's not interested. Zach reached out to some people he knows, they weren't interested.
Jeffrey Gabe?
We did.
Yeah.
So Gabe got us a price today. Sorry, I don't have it in writing. Veolia gave us a price of $3,600 per day to get the repairs done on that pump station. We're providing the parts. We have everything already, I believe, to get the work done. And it's somewhat, I'm just not gonna say an emergency, but it's something we should get done sooner than later, because if that one pump that's left stops operating, that pump station will overflow.
So Pete, if I may, is the price quote open-ended to where if I go there, it's $3,000 a day, we go into day two, now it's $6,000?
They're pretty confident that they can do it in one day. It's just, he put the per day there in case something crazy happened during that time frame. So he's gonna have to have a couple pumper trucks there to block off the flow to the pump station and pump out the manhole as the flow's coming in. And also have his guys working inside the pump station, pumping that down and doing those repairs as well. I believe he was doing repairs on, say, pump 2, and also doing some other small repairs on pump 1 at the same time. And talking to Zach, he believes it should be done, they should be able to get it all done in one day for that price, but just in case something happened.
And this is right at the bottom of North Sturbridge?
Yes.
So he's the lowest estimate?
He's the only estimate.
Okay, I thought you said Gabe gave you a price.
This is Gabe,
Oh, that is
through
Gabe.
Veolia.
Through Veolia.
Sorry.
Okay.
This is Slim's through Veolia.
Okay,
Slim, he's been off the board for a year. Like I said, we've tried to get prices from other people, there haven't been any, so
Yep.
we've been waiting for that year to elapse, so. If I could, if someone, again, sorry I don't have this in
I'll make,
writing, but
I'll
Zach
make a
said-
motion, we approve that expenditure.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 MVP action grant. Again, I believe this was talked about at the last meeting, and I wasn't able to be here, so I just wanted to bring it back up quickly. Stevens Park Road Pump Station. As part of the MVP program, we're able to apply for action grants to actually do work to some infrastructure that we found to be deteriorating based on climate change. The Stevens Park Road Pump Station is, the fence bollards are all pushed up from groundwater flowing off the hill, flowing off the roadway, freezing, heaving. The concrete base for the electrical panel is all heaved up, and the panel and the conduits are probably pretty much ready to go. And working with Fuss and O'Neill, who is our engineering company for the MVP grant from the first round of funding, they did an analysis of the pump station, came up with an estimate to do the repairs, and applied for the next round of grant funding to get us funding to do that. Part of this grant, however, is a 25% match. So you'll see they came up with a total grant requested of $167,000, and of that, our price match would be $41,700 to do those repairs to the Stevens Park Road Pump Station. So we've applied for it, we haven't received it yet. I just wanted you to be aware of it in case it comes forward.
This is what Zach went over with us at the last meeting.
Correct, but from looking at the minutes or hearing the discussion, you guys had some follow-up questions or concerns about the 25% match or the need to do that work.
I think we had discussed that, we saw there was potentially some room for cost savings and shavings,
I
but
guess,
I think that's
right,
way off.
the bottom line is we will be spending $41,000.
Correct.
There is no equipment in that pump station that's gonna be replaced.
No,
No. So all of it is outside grading
site work.
and site work. So I would recommend that Peter, you may get together, you know, even with our highway people or a couple contractors, get them over there and saying, this needs to get straightened out, give me some quotes.
It's beyond that. I think the work to be done, because it's so close to a river, just the permitting alone is gonna be $15,000 to $20,000, even if it is us. Just to
No.
hire an engineer. Most definitely. Because what you're gonna need to do is take all the road runoff and take all the water flowing off of that hill behind it, and
Yeah.
actual run some curtain drains that go directly into the river that flows into the lake. So,
Where's it going right now?
over the ground.
Over the ground, into the river, into the
But you
lake.
know, if you wanna change that
Well,
close to a perennial stream, you can't just do that and have it be the same. It's gonna be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in engineering just to get you to be able to do that.
Yeah,
Whether we do it, whether this company
Yeah,
does it.
I think what we need to do is, I think we need to do a little more footwork. Again, I'm looking at $41,000, that's a lot of money to do, to do,
Not-
the site work.
I think if we were pressed and we had to do it, in not even an emergency, but if we had to do it on our own, yes, we could do it for less than this. If the grant funding is, I'd ask that we wait until we see if we even get the grant. If we get the grant, we'll look exactly at what it is, look at what's covered, what isn't, have the engineer come in and describe to you why the cost is so high.
Why he's got $70,000 worth of soft costs there?
And again, it's a grant application.
Oh, it's someone else is paying for it, I got it,
It's,
I got it.
it's a
You
grant,
pay
it's
taxes.
a grant
have
application
to
with a
take
lot
the
of
grant
unknowns.
money.
It's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
preliminary plan, so, yeah, I mean, maybe it's excessive, so I ask, before I go out and start doing a bunch of work, we wait and see if we even get the grant. And then if we don't get the grant and we have to do the repairs, we look at what we can do in that aspect to get it done.
I think we have to do the repairs no matter what. Hopefully, we get the grant
Hopefully
and
we get
we
the
can
grant.
work it. But even better is we can find some local people and use our conservation department to work with us and be able to do this for less than $41,000 and get it done soon.
Have you been, did you drive by it yet?
No, I haven't.
I just,
This is on L. Stevens Road,
Stevens Park Road,
better known as the Dam Road?
yes,
Okay.
the dam road.
That's what
I've
I
never
mean.
heard that.
Well,
What goes to the
if you've
dam?
been here for 35, 40 years, it's known as the Dam
It's the
Road.
dam road, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll wait and see what we get back from that grant. Okay, water line construction update. Berry Corner Road, Ludlow is installing water main on Eleanor. They've hit ledge at the very last portion, so they've kind of been slowed down a little bit, but the water line and probably 5 or 6 service connections are installed already. They just have a little bit left to do on Eleanor, and then all the main and service connections will be installed, and they're gonna start doing actual services to private properties. They've pressure tested all of H-Foot Road and it's passed. They're gonna start pressure testing Berry Corner Road next week. So they're moving along pretty well.
And that's just the main line to the curb stops.
Correct.
And when they do the laterals, do they actually pressure test the laterals?
Yes, because they're installed already. Yeah.
The laterals are installed already?
No, the curb stop is on the property line. That's
Right.
when you say lateral.
No, lateral is from the house
No,
to the curb
that's-
stop.
If it leaks on private property, the person's paying for it.
No, the meters are in the basement.
Yeah. You're paying.
So
Oh,
private,
you're saying the leak is before that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
the meters are in the basement. So what they do is they pressure test to the property line, which
Right.
is the curb stop.
Yeah.
The service connection from the curb stop to the house, the main is active. After that's, while that's dug up and installed, they open the curb stop, pressurize that service line to the home, and they check any joints at that time visually for leaks before they backfill.
Okay. Some of those services to the homes, they're 600, 700, 800 feet long?
There is a few that are very long.
Okay, it's a long ways to leave an open trench.
In the past, that's what Southbridge's requirements have been.
Okay, but you hear what I'm
They-
saying?
Well, what they allow contractors to do is backfill the line where they're, and just leave the unions
Leave the
exposed.
joints.
That's where they're concerned about.
Okay, yep.
So. The school loop, Albanese Brothers is continuing to install water main on Old Worcester Road. They're almost at Charlton Orchards, and they plan to leave an 8-inch lateral to El Turner Road and reduce it down to 4-inch at the property line for now, with not knowing what's gonna happen in the
It's
future.
reasonable.
So that should pretty much take care of, no matter which way it goes, the property owner or whoever's there can make that decision in the future. They have almost completed installing the water main on H. Putnam Road, and except for the connections at Stafford Street, at either end, either on Stafford Street or Route 20, they're still talking about how they're gonna make those connections. So, Albanese is in the process of pressure testing the water main on Masonic Home Road, and once that water main passes, they're gonna have a third crew start service connections to the properties on Masonic Home Road. So,
What is it, five connections, 6, the most?
yeah, but there's enough, and there's a couple of public, there's that one public water supply well that does the Carpentier Plaza and also the other pizza place as well. That they're ready to connect, so once we get this activated, there's a valve partway up the hill. We
Yep.
can activate their portion of the water line, and they should have enough usage to get water flowing to them and take that public water supply offline. So,
Are they gonna connect those people before Masonic Home connects?
yes, because there's a valve partway up the hill, so we can activate just that portion of the
Okay, and that's a
main.
12-inch line.
No, yes. Yes, I believe so.
Did stay 12 all the way up to Masonic? Yeah.
I believe that's 8-inch.
They-
They did 8-inch.
Okay.
There.
But it's 12 right at the center,
It could
the
be.
crossroads.
It could be. But what they put in the road is 8-inch. So,
Peter, while you're there, what are all these chalk marks and painted marks in front of the current police station and then going down the hill in front of the vacant land there?
dig safe.
Dig, for what? Who's there digging there?
Nobody, I think the engineer that's doing the conceptual design for the public safety complex building.
Okay,
wants to know
has
what
nothing
was
to do with the actual current construction and the putting of the water lines in?
No,
Okay.
no, nothing to do with us. They, I believe they had that site surveyed. You see all the orange flags heading down
Yeah,
past the police
yeah.
station, so that
Yeah.
property was surveyed. And the engineer working for the architect called and asked about the dig safe for that portion of the roadway.
Do you know who the engineer is?
No,
Okay, no big deal.
They
Thank you.
called.
It's okay.
nobody local.
Yep.
The Route 169 pump station, R.H. White's been working to finish the installation of the pump station. The fence has been installed, propane tank, the generator, pretty much the underground conduit has all been installed, inspected, they're just doing the final touches. Once they get the final electrical inspection, we were at a meeting today, National Grid will put in the request to drop power to the building, and they said that's about a 6-week wait, unfortunately, so. It's moving along, but that's probably gonna be well, I think once we get the final electrical inspection and they put the request in the National Grid, hopefully we can kinda make some phone calls and see if we can get that done sooner than later.
All right, so when we're doing the Masonic Home pump station slash pump station at Bay Path, looking at the schedule about 5 weeks before they think it's gonna be done, call Mass Electric up and ask them for the drop,
No,
so we'll
'cause-
get it within a week?
The electrical has to be signed off by the local inspector before they'll put it in the queue,
Okay,
and
so,
the electrical is not done yet. The conduit's in the ground, but they're still doing wiring in the building.
in the
So-
in the prefab building,
Correct. But there's still wiring to be done.
yeah,
There's still joints, there's still connections.
okay.
But it's so cute.
So the number one item is get your electrical done,
Get the electrical done, to get
Yeah.
National Grid,
to,
get in the
to,
queue.
to get into the
Yep, get in their queue.
little yellow duckies.
But again, fence is being installed, final grading's done, I think they spread some loom today, and they're still just working at it, so we're getting there. Bay Path and Overlook Pump Stations, nothing new to report at this time. Buffinville Public Water Supply, we discussed earlier. Trolley Crossing Road, Clint Sykes has begun installing that water main, I guess, this week. So that's for the Chacharoni building that you guys approved last year. That's about it for construction. Any questions?
next meeting will be June third, then we're gonna
Correct,
skip
right?
May
Yep,
twentieth.
our next meeting, well, as of now, unless
Yeah.
something happens and we need to meet to
Give us a call.
discuss something with town meeting or something like that, we'll meet the 20th, but as of now, Veolia will be there on June 3rd to talk about their, I guess that'd be their April MOR, and they'll also be there the second meeting in June to talk about their May MOR, so.
I have a final motion from someone, please.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Riley, second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Thank you, everybody.